Hello, leaders of the world. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I'm Naji, your host for this podcast, joined today by Paul Hartung, a longtime life sciences and technology executive with a proven track record in launching successful startup businesses and leading Fortune 500 organizations. Paul currently serves on several board of directors, including Leuko and Verisense. He mentors at MIT VMS, MassBio MassCONNECT, and the Capital Network, and serves as a judge for MassChallenge. He served as president and CEO through successful phase 2 of Cognoptics, which has developed an innovative eye scan for early detection of Alzheimer's disease. Paul also founded Sun Events and has held senior management roles at 3Com, Summit, Trump, Laserfair, and GE. Paul graduated with honors from MIT with an MS degree in mechanical engineering. He is an active speaker, author, and inventor on a number of patents. Paul, it's such an honor to have you with me today.
Well, thank you very much, Naji. I really appreciate the invitation.
Can you first share with us, Paul, your personal story from mechanical engineering to life sciences and an impressive entrepreneurial track record? What's behind this inspiring journey you have?
Yeah, I guess I like to categorize myself as an engineer who loves to make things, right? So early on, my research at MIT was at the Lab for Manufacturing and Productivity. So I got involved in all kinds of manufacturing processes and advanced materials. And actually, some of my work is being taught today at MIT on my research. So I started in the aerospace industry, which is a manufacturing industry. And then I looked around and I realized that, manufacturing was really changing and I wanted to do something different. So one of the things that caught my interest was lasers. And there's lots of different things you can do with lasers and photonics. But I started looking at industrial lasers, high power lasers, and got a whole taste of the whole process of mergers and acquisitions of companies. I had a crash course in that I went from GE to a small company, then another small company that was acquired by a bigger company and merged with another company, all in a period of years. And that's what ended up being described on my resume as Trump. But it started as a spin out of Combustion Engineering, which is an energy company. But then I got exposed to medical technology first using lasers as a manufacturing tool because, they're used to make pacemakers and things like that. There are things you can do with lasers that you can't do with other manufacturing processes. So I went and I spoke at an MDDI conference, which is on medical devices, using lasers as a manufacturing tool. And lo and behold, after a little bit of a journey, through these mergers and acquisitions, I ended up getting a call from a friend of mine who was working for a medical laser company, and a startup that was called Summit Technologies. And that was a company that developed LASIK. So I, made this huge pivot in my career to do that. And at the same time, I was developing skills sort of across business rather than doing an MBA. Again, I have, a couple of engineering degrees. I decided to learn different aspects of the business. So I actually applied to a manufacturing job. And this startup was sort of expanding. They wanted to do manufacturing in Ireland and take advantage of some tax breaks and what have you. So I came in to kind of run manufacturing locally, and we didn't have FDA approval yet. So had to go through the whole process of getting FDA approval, and learned that firsthand. And I then got distracted. I ended up doing that for several years, and I got a call. Sort of the whole Internet of Things industry was starting to blossom. and I got a call from a company called 3Com Corporation, which I hadn't even heard of at the time. But at that time, its bread and butter was connecting everybody to the internet. I mean, there were basically devices that you plugged into every laptop to connect to the internet. But the company grew through acquisitions. So every month, the company was acquiring another company. So now with our smartphones, kind of evolved from something that was called the Palm Pilot. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but these PDAs were kind of a precursor to smartphones. And 3Com bought the company that makes those. I learned, though I'm a mechanical engineer by training, I learned all about kind of software intensive businesses and electrical hardware done at very low cost. And I learned partnering as well, the global supply chain, because we had 3 internal factories, like 4 subcontractors that we worked with on the outside. And I ended up with this global operations role, figuring out how to make new product, how to design new products anywhere and make them anywhere. So in concept. And then I got back into startups. I joined a company called Winforia that was acquired by Motorola and developed another mobile technology called push to talk. So after that little diversion into tech again, I decided I was going to do a medical device startup. And I ended up being in the right place at the right time. I started researching how to kind of raise money for startups, and went to a little conference put on by a law firm. And I enjoyed one of the speakers, spoke to him in the hallway, and he said, "Oh, you need to meet these scientists who are putting together this, that made this great discovery of amyloid in the eye that kind of parallels what goes on in the brain with Alzheimer's disease." And you know, your photonics background, you know, working with the eye with LASIK, my business background, I ended up in my kind of first founding CEO job. And that was initially named Neuroptics, changed its name to Cognoptics at one point due to a kind of trademark thing with another company. But it was quite a journey. You know, coming from a very successful tech startup that had raised a lot of money from venture capital, I thought I could, you know, raise money quickly through venture capital. Instead, I found myself being introduced to angel financing. And because it was Alzheimer's disease, it was too scary. The market at that time was very tough. So by accident, I syndicated the first angel deal in the Northeast, because I couldn't make enough money through, you know, one angel group. I put 4 together and, you know, did a financing. So, you know, I ultimately raised $3 million in angel financing and did the development that was needed to sort of get ready for venture financing. And what happened? The economy crashed. This was back in 2008. And luckily, I was kind of searching internationally for venture funding. I had a lead investor in Europe, and we closed a financing in September when the whole U.S. economy had shut down that year already. No one was getting financings, so that helped hurdle me forward. And yeah, you know, that was a wonderful journey for me. That company, you know, we were one of the 4 leading inventions by, you know, the Alzheimer's Association. They do an international conference in 2015, and really positioned for success. You know, a real issue was no company had a treatment. And that ended up being a real kind of barrier to adoption.
Wow, well, thank you so much for sharing. This is really inspiring and incredible journey. And you shared so many times the word learning, and it seems every single job you took was
Yeah,
based out of curiosity, learning. So I'd love to double click on this. As you were taking those jobs, and obviously it's risky, right? Like you're jumping. I imagine what you felt. I've
yeah,
also kind of constantly moved to jobs, new jobs that I don't know about.
right.
What was your backbone? Is there like a backbone capability or something within your core or leadership signature that you always kind of relied on, or something else that made you, go learn fast and succeed?
Well, something that's great about MIT is they teach you problem-solving skills. So that's one thing at the core, kind of being able to kind of step back, be humble, learn as much as you can about a situation before jumping to conclusions and jumping to the solution space. So kind of problem solving is a process. And I also look at product development as a process that translates across industries, actually. A lot of people, and a lot of people are very successful kind of choosing sort of an industry segment and role, even sometimes, that they're very effective at and going very deep. Well, I found that I talked about working for a company like GE. Well, guess what? They did some military business. It was military helicopter engines was one of the things that they made. Where we were, which is a regulated industry, right? And there were some grants associated with the kind of work I was doing, writing and supporting grants is kind of a general skill. I found that the process of team building, one thing I'm passionate about is developing cross-functional teams. And having an interest in manufacturing, there's this traditional wall between engineering and manufacturing where they used to say that ideas would be kind of thrown over the wall and manufacturing people would have to figure out how to make it. Well, over time, we've all learned that it's most effective to bring all the stakeholders in early, in the process, and create these cross-functional teams that are very effective. So I've done that on the level of job functions, and more recently done it on the level of complex things like drug delivery, where you need to have people who understand the pharma side, and you also have people who understand the sort of the mechanics of drug delivery or understand advanced materials. And it's interesting getting a diverse team together in the same room and trying to figure out how to move forward to a common cause.
Oh, and I want to go there because I love what you said about the wall, between engineering or tech and then manufacturing. And I'm sure you've seen another wall once this is, produced, like a wall for marketing and sales to figure out
Yep,
how to sell it, right? So,
absolutely.
so as you are building and working those with diverse teams, as the leader of all those teams, what do you practically do? You said like put people together in a room. In today's world, it's possible physically. Sometimes our teams are remote. I'm sure in your
Right,
word the same.
right.
So I'd
No, it
love
can
to
be done
see,
remotely.
yeah. So I'd love to learn more from you. Like, what are the tips? How have you done it to build really this cross-functional team that is going towards a purpose, as you said, a common purpose to deliver on the mission they had? So how have you done this?
Well, I think part of it is effective meeting management. Everybody gets quickly sick of too many meetings. But if you have a structure where there's a periodic team meeting say weekly. And, you have to have a manageable number of people. And that partly has to do with how big the project is and the structure of the team. But if you have, 10 people in the room, let's say, you give everybody the opportunity to give a quick update from their perspective. And also, they may have an ask. And at first, when people are hearing something that's very foreign to them, they think maybe it's a waste of time, or they don't understand it, or whatever. But it starts to sink in. They start to get an appreciation of all of the pieces of the puzzle. You don't have to become an expert in everything, but knowing a little bit about and understanding what impacts your fellow team members. It's those intersections, that are most important. And someone from a completely different discipline may have a great idea or great solution for one of their teammates. So that's part of it. I think another part of it is just having really good project management. I'm a believer in project plans and Gantt charts and those sorts of things, and trying to work to a schedule. And if there are delays, figuring out what things can be done independently, what can be done to mitigate issues with the plan. But yeah, usually with a complex project, the solutions may come from anywhere. There's different facets to the project, and to work around a delay in one area, someone may need to step up in another area.
It's reminding me of what we also at MIT learned, right? Like all this dynamic work design and how to do this. Have you seen a difference between doing it in startups? So you've done like all scales of companies, right? Like from startup to large corporations. Yeah. Is there any difference doing it through those? And I'd love to hear the cultural perspective as you're managing those teams and building those effective, high-performing teams.
Well, I've seen speed come from almost like volume. Have a big team. One example was Winforia. We were actually a startup, but a very well-funded, VC-backed startup. We had 120 software engineers in 3 countries, and having Boston, effectively Madrid, and Bangalore, India. We could have software development 24/7. And, because people are in different time zones, and the challenge was kind of knitting together all this work. But, in contrast, and that's more difficult than it may seem, right? Knitting together work of software engineers, but there are tools involved, right? There are these configuration management systems that knit the software together, and you can, you set up the proper processes, and you can be effective and have good leadership, that's communicating across the teams. But I would say that startups these days, and Cognoptics, the example I gave you before, the Alzheimer's thing, that was a complex project, because we weren't doing a treatment, we were doing a diagnostic, but it did involve a reagent which was formulated into an ophthalmic ointment. So it's like a drug development project, not for treatment, for diagnosis, in parallel with a complex optical system. The system had 6 axes of motion, and did a measurement in milliseconds, and it was a fluorescent spectroscopy measurement. It was quite sophisticated. We had 5 people in the office. I mean, our team was tiny. And how did we do it? We did it through partnering. and we chose really good partners and a top-notch team. But a lot of it was, in a way, project management. It was realizing that we weren't going to be the manufacturer, so we had to have a manufacturer that had all the certifications, proven track record of doing this kind of complex product on the device side. We had to separate, right? Then we had to find someone to make the API. We ended up moving that manufacturing to India for cost. We ended up having a complex formulation. We had searched the world, found a partner in the United States that was one of the only ones that could handle the formulation of our product. We even created patents for some of the formulation steps because it was so complicated. I won't get into the details, but but we wouldn't have been able to do it ourselves. We wouldn't have been able to create our own bricks and mortar and do that manufacturing. On the development side, it's trickier. There's a range of possibilities. You can hire, in some cases, one company to do your development for you, to do your design work for you, right? I haven't been so successful with that. What I've done is tended to kind of break things into pieces and use a company that's really good on software development, use a company that's really good on, say, mechanical design, maybe another company that's really good at electrical design, and then kind of have them work together as a team, and bring everybody together.
So Paul, you were heavily involved in helping ventures, helping startups, founders through the different work you do. What is the number one advice that you would give for founders of startups in healthcare?
Number one, I would say, one, make sure that you're addressing an unmet need and that people at the end of the day will really care. Identify who will care enough to pay, care enough to utilize, care enough. So that exploratory process, and it took me some time to learn this, but I'm seeing it more and more. It's been formalized in programs like I-Corps, which you may have heard of, that to get an SBIR grant, you have a 40% better chance if you go through this I-Corps program. And the principle is, you have a great idea, reach out to about 100 stakeholders, potential stakeholders, and explore the idea and make sure you're addressing something that's really a pain point out there. Because sometimes current treatments or current methods aren't optimal, but they're kind of like good enough that having something that's a little bit better doesn't move the bar. It doesn't, for one, it's hard to raise money, but at the end of the day, you can go through all the work, and it's quite a journey. You put blood, sweat, and tears into a program, and after several years, find out you're basically done, but there's no real market for what you're doing, or you can't find a commercialization partner because there just isn't a strategic fit. So I'm a believer in working on those issues very early. You also have to make sure that your science is really solid. So I think there are some spin-outs that are premature, that really need to make sure their science is very solid, that the way I look at it, data is your currency, right? You can tell people that it's going to work, but really you have to show them data that proves that it's going to work. Because you have to have something that works, that, again, people care about, right? It's those two pieces. And too often that second one of, will people really care about it? It's not an easy
Yeah,
one to get to. You care
exactly.
passionately. The entrepreneur, the founder, feels passionately about it and maybe thinks everybody else is stupid because they don't get it. They don't, but it's really important to sort out.
Yeah, and you mentioned care about and willing to pay. Like there's this value
Right,
at the end of the day, value creation and capture that you need to figure out.
right.
Paul, I'll give you now a word, and I'd love your reaction to it. So the first one is leadership.
To me, it's keeping a team motivated through the tough times. It's always easy to stand up and give praise for all the successes, but the real challenge, particularly in a startup, and even in companies that are working on programs that are difficult programs, it's the hard times and figuring out the plan Bs, and I've even been in a situation where my whole team went off salary for several months because we were kind of between financings. And that takes more than just kind of the traditional carrots that you hand out in business. It takes developing a passion as a team for what you're doing.
Can I double click on that? And if you can tell us the story and how you developed this passion to make sure that people keep on coming?
Yeah, well, I can expand on that particular story. And that was it was a point in Cognoptic's life. Actually, I had mentioned that we were trying to raise money when the economy collapsed. Well, just before the economy collapsed, I actually had a syndicate of investors ready to invest. And your board becomes part of the expanded team of a company. Well, the particular group of investors sort of became, in my mind, toxic. They weren't working well together, and one of the investors was sort of becoming very manipulative. And we thought that we were ready to close a financing, and then at the last minute, terms were changing. So finally, I had to make the tough decision based on the fact that I would need to live with these people. They're not only, giving us money, but, the next few years of the company, we'd be tied to these people. I realized that it just wasn't going to work, and took a big gamble and tested loyalty of my earliest investors. They came back and did a small bridge to keep us going while I pivoted to find a different set of investors. That's when I went international, and found an international lead investor. But the team had a choice. We either continue working, or effectively we had to kind of mothball the company. Everyone wanted to keep going. I had actually one person leave, but it was actually right before I closed the next financing. And you know what? Everybody was made whole. We ended up, for that time that people took off, they all get paid for that time in the end, once we closed the financing. So it was scary, but we just kind of put our heads down and carried out our mission.
Oh, and I'm sure it talks to the culture you created for people to keep on showing up and being here.
Yeah.
The second word is innovation.
Innovation. Yeah. One of those words that I love, but maybe overused. I guess there are lots and lots of good ideas that emerge every day, right? And unfortunately, a lot of innovations never see the light of day. People may file a patent. I know that all of the major institutions have piles of patents that they can't even license out. They don't know what to do with. So it's an issue of finding ideas that actually can make a difference, that can have an impact. And that gets back to some of the things we were saying before of really exploring the landscape, understanding if it's in the treatment space, understanding the kind of landscape of treatments that are available today, really understanding, the unmet need before putting a lot of effort into your particular innovation. Again, building off something I said before, I think some of the more important innovations are based on kind of a combination of things. It's like a convergence of technologies. Another, overused one is AI, for instance, right? AI everything. But if you look at advances in materials, you look at advances in nanotech, being able to get down to a much smaller scale. You look at all of the discoveries around DNA and RNA and gene editing, and where that can possibly go. And you think about the problems of treating the right individual in the right location in their body that's affected without creating toxic effects on the rest of the body, and then effectively, say, monitoring their dosing. It takes a village. It takes kind of a combination of technologies. So I'm a great believer in kind of innovation in these systems that can solve the bigger problems.
What about board of directors?
Board of directors. Board of directors, I've been on some, very effective ones. To a certain extent, they're there for support and guidance, and it kind of depends on the maturity of the management team. Sometimes it comes down to kind of advice. There's some formalities around, governance and responsibility, fiduciary responsibilities to the shareholders and that sort of thing, that are kind of the basics of business structure, and being incorporated, that you have to maintain. But I'm a believer in making sure that the management team feels supported, that they have a structure in place for being rewarded and incentivized, and things like stock options and things like the periodic review of the overall, cash compensation plan, and making sure that there's some sort of bonus structure in place, and giving them support as they're looking at partnering possibilities, leveraging connections, and giving them, some guidance on how to even approach that process. I kind of wear both the advisor and there's a bit of oversight, in the role of director. And as an independent director, I really enjoy kind of helping bridge the gap. Sometimes there's tension between investors that may have their own timelines, get a little impatient about return on investment, and the management team that's doing the best they can to, to deal with some difficult problems. And I can help kind of moderate a bit there.
The last word is spread love in organizations.
Well, I try to spread a lot of love with the teams I work with. I think it's maybe part of developing that passion across the organization, if you will, for what we're doing together. So I kind of lead by doing, and I try to lead with my behavior as well.
Any final word of wisdom for healthcare leaders around the world?
You're doing important work. Keep it up. There are lots of big healthcare challenges out there, and we all need to be thinking of novel ways to approach them and get them to everybody.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, for being with me today.
You're very welcome. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for listening to Spread Love in Organizations podcast. Subscribe and connect with us on SpreadLoveIO.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Most importantly, spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our world so desperately needs.